Yeah, welcome very, very much to Conversations. A pleasure to have as our guest Tony Gronowicz. He's a professor with the CUNY, and he is a person we're going to be talking with him. We've done a number of programs with him in the past. He's been a very early proponent and follower of the Green Party, a third-party candidate party. Relevant to the national election process and so forth. And Tony, welcome so much. It's so good to see you again.
Always good to see you, Harold.
Always good to see you, Tony. You're always working. I know you're working hard. You write very well. And we wanted to talk now in the election season. This is, what's the date today? This is
27th of July.
27th of July. What's the year?
2016.
2016 of the what year? Christian era? Is that fair to say?
I wouldn't say.
How do we define it? I don't know. I'm not sure.
Of the global era.
Yeah, global era. Thank you very much. Spoken like a real thinking person and everything. But it's election season, and you are. I've been watching, not having I just share with the audience and myself in a certain sense. I don't have a particular dog in the fight. In terms of between the Democrat and the Republican. I'm not all in with one or all in with the other. I'm much more looking like Diogenes. Remember Diogenes? He went around the world as a lantern looking for an honest man. Was what they were looking for something new in terms of the
Well, you'll find them on the street. You won't find them in Congress.
Well, okay, that's what I'm talking about. But I'm looking for something that's kind of different than the political process by which we get so much excitement and so forth. But now, what do you think? What did you think? You're going to, I understand Jill's going to be on the ballot as far as the Green Party.
That's correct.
And Mr. Johnson also and so on. Share us in how it looks from the standpoint of people who are independently of the two Democratic and Republican major parties looks at this election season in July of 2016.
Well, they have a choice. They can vote the old party system, which no longer works and is badly fragmented. Both of the two parties are badly fractured. The last time both parties, dominant parties, were badly fractured was before the Civil War in the 1850s.
Yeah, you're a historian. Yeah, you have a sense of history.
They've never been so fractured as they are now. And this is a hopeful sign for a third party to come in and introduce fresh ideas, because it's retreads. With Trump and Clinton, you're dealing with people who are retreads of the old way of doing things. We need somebody to pay attention to the environment, and that is chill. And war making, which is Clinton's forte, is not conducive to the environment, to living things, and to people's happiness. So the Green Party is for having an alternative which emphasizes environmental justice.
Yes, she does, right, particularly in the age
Jill
where
Stein.
Some people see it used to always be a certain thing, a major premise that was being advanced, but the climate change thing is just gallop. I think that's only come into real strong prominence within the last 5 or 10 years at the outside, but it's emerged as a major premise for a great deal of a great deal of responsible thinking by people.
Well, because the oceans are polluted by plastic, the air is polluted by carbon dioxide, pollution is rampant. We saw what happened in Flint with the water system, the lead, and there's no accountability, no sense of responsibility on the part of the elected officials who are normally representatives of the two parties. It's about taking the money and running away with it, and they're not doing anything that's really going to address the fundamental problems that we have today, dealing with full-time jobs with full benefits, a sound environment, good air to breathe, good water to drink, healthy food. All of that is absolutely essential.
Yeah, that's ticking off a number of the means by which we could get at what the end results would be of the social organization of society, isn't it? What the components of a well-organized society would pay attention to.
Look, a campaign speech can be very short. When I ran for mayor in 2013,
you did. You ran for mayor.
I had a 30 on the Green Party, and I came in 4th out of 15 candidates.
Yeah, pretty good.
And I had a very short campaign speech. And the campaign speech was, I believe in the five-fingered exercise. Jobs, the environment.
Wait a minute. Go slow. Jobs.
Education. Environment. Healthcare. And housing. Together they spell, they can be clenched, and we have to move forward.
Is that fist or something?
Fist, yes.
It does really? F-I-S-T is fist, isn't it?
That's right.
Well, you got an extra letter in there somewhere. You're sneaking an extra letter.
No, I didn't.
You said 5.
I said 5, but we have 5 fingers, Harold.
Oh, 5 fingers, not 5 elements.
No 5 elements. 5 issues.
5
Jobs, education, housing, healthcare, and the environment.
That's 5.
That's your campaign. That's what the Green Party stands for.
Okay,
and nothing else.
I see. Okay,
that's a very short campaign speech, and you vote for us, we'll emphasize that. And you satisfy people's needs, you won't have crime. You won't have people hating one another or being forced to hate one another on religious and other grounds. We're a toleration party. We believe in mutual toleration. If you remember when after Sandy, the subway system closed down.
Oh my God, it was horrible.
Yes, but when it opened up and people had free rides on the subway, it was never friendly or very nice, never nicer on the subway. When we had in the aftermath of Sandy, when they weren't charging for the subway. We shouldn't charge for public transportation.
We shouldn't charge for anything?
Public transportation.
No, I know. You think, public transportation should be
free?
Is it
absolutely.
like that somewhere?
Well, it's cheaper elsewhere. I mean, it's ridiculous here.
It could be free if you were in an all government thing. A government runs a thing, and
absolutely.
Just, like that, right?
Exactly. It could be.
Yeah,
it definitely could be.
You would like to have a situation where get rid of the private sector or something, or would that be is that something the Greens would be in favor of?
Well, we would want to restore the public trust by restoring public services to a level at which they serve the public, not where we're inconvenienced by delays, by shutdowns, by lack of service, because the public sector is being starved to serve the private sector, and that's not good.
What should we do about the private sector as a systemic question?
The private sector has to be reined in. It has to obey the law. It has to follow certain regulations and guidelines which meet the needs of the public. We can't just have the private sector run amok and run roughshod over the public interest.
That's probably like from when horses. You shot a horse. You would put a horseshoe on a horse.
I guess so. And then
you would run roughshod. That's where the term comes from.
That's right. It comes from that.
And everything like that. Yeah. Well, I wonder if we did that, how that would be realized and so forth. And
well, we have to go back to the tax system we had a while ago, where the wealthy paid a fair share of taxes. Now they can have all their income, if they wish, offshored, where they don't pay any taxes. In 2001, $2 trillion was offshored. In 2012, $21 trillion was offshored, more than the GDP of Japan and the United States put together.
Yeah.
The reason why we lack tax money to perform public service, to serve the public, is because the money is not there. It's there, but it's offshored.
Let me reference, if that's the right term, a thing I've seen. There's a lot of talk. It's political season and everything like that, and this would be is something like I haven't got it exact. I'm not good with exactitude in anything, but anyways, in general, they said there's something like 1/10 of 1% has something like 90 or 80% of the wealth of the country in the United States of America. It's all concentrated in minuscule, tiny plutocratic class. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know if those statistics are correct, but they're extreme statistics.
Yeah.
We've not had such inequality in this country since before the First World War.
Wait a minute. There was a time when it was like that in the history. You're a historian.
Before the First World War, when there was no federal income tax, we had gross inequality. We have to go back to before the First World War to find such gross inequality in this society as we have now. And that's a serious social and economic problem.
Hasn't it
and it's not being dealt with politically because both parties are dependent upon raising money to wage campaigns and getting out there through campaign advertising, because we don't have public financing of elections, which they have in certain countries, where all the parties are represented equally. And we have genuine debates.
But doesn't that make it inordinately favorable to the wealthy to be able to buy campaigns and buy elections and buy people?
Well, of course. That's why there's so little.
Isn't that what a lot of people are upset with?
That's why we have so little participation in an average election.
Yeah,
because of
not
that.
participation in election, but there's not a sense of confidence among the mass of the society in terms of the justice or the appropriateness of the way the society is set up. Angst is reigning very, very large now at this particular time, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, on both sides.
People
are
angry.
saying it's the other people that are causing the trouble.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
People are frustrated and angry because things are not working out.
Are they directing?
We never had, look, when I went to college, college was free.
Yeah,
now student debt is greater than credit card debt.
Horrible.
It's over $1 trillion. Well, of course it's horrible.
Can't
Why
pay
isn't
back.
anything being done about that?
Mm-hmm.
Why do both parties go along with it? Because both parties are inherently corrupt, because they're dependent on private money to present a public platform which they're not going to follow through on.
Have it always been like this? You're
Well,
a
of course
historian.
not, because...
No, was there a golden age when things were
Well, there wasn't a
good
golden
or
age,
not,
but
or
public
what,
higher
or-
education was free, as it is
but
currently.
You're talking about a specific thing.
I'm talking about higher education.
Public.
Germany is free. Cuba is free. The United States is very expensive. And students, if
But
they
it
go to
wasn't
school
when
full
you and I
time.
were young, it wasn't expensive. I didn't pay anything to go to university. I had the GI Bill. They had the GI Bill. There was general money. There was a lot of money sloshing around after the Second World War. And so
That's
things
right.
were, there was a golden era there, 2 or 3 decades or 4 decades.
Well, because no country sacrificed so little and gained so much from the Second World War
and they
as
won the war.
as the United States.
And we won the war.
Well, we helped
we were
win
the
the war.
winners.
We helped win the war.
Yeah.
In Europe, it was principally the Red Army that won the war.
That was terrible what happened there. 30 million dead in the Soviet Union.
That's correct.
It was horrible. They took the brunt of it, did they not?
That's correct.
Yeah.
But they managed to take over Eastern Europe and half of Germany because of the way the war was conducted by Roosevelt.
You don't think he was
to
a good war president, or?
Not particularly. I mean, there would have been more casualties if Washington had followed Eisenhower, who wanted to go into Europe in '43, not wait until '44.
Really?
Okay, because they were waiting till the Germans. They were waiting till the Germans and the Russians killed each other off. Well, it just so happened that the Russians were killing, pushing the Germans back much quicker than anticipated on the part of the Washington-London coalition.
How did all those tanks get out there in Siberia or something and be able to launch such an effective attack against the fascists that were coming in from Germany?
Well, they had these
Where did all that
innovative
logistics come from?
Well, they
be coming in from Siberia or something, or where they were protected to the east.
Well, Russia is very
big. Yes, very big.
And you withdraw, and then you defend the major cities, Leningrad and Moscow, and Hitler went after Stalingrad, named after the Soviet leader, and that was the greatest battle in history with the greatest casualties, and it was in the dead of winter.
The greatest battle in history? Is that
in terms of casualties, 1.5 million people died in that battle. Yes,
wow. Yeah,
it lasted 8 months, of course it was named after the Soviet leader. So it was very, very psychologically comforting to the Russians, but very psychologically destructive to the Germans.
And were they not then representing Stalin or whatever?
Stalin was the leader.
I know Stalin was the leader, but what they were doing ideologically, perhaps, was following or trying to follow, or have since 1917 or something, the writings and the notions of a communist called Karl Marx, and they were trying to do away with the, to create a utopia on Earth in the name of socialism or of communism. Was that not the battle?
Well, that was the dream, but of course you first have to build up the infrastructure. And what happened in Russia...
That's what I was asking about, where all those tanks came from that they used to fight out
They built up the military during the 1930s.
And did we help them do that?
Not particularly.
Was there?
Not
How did
particularly.
They didn't get support from the United States or anything like that.
They got very limited support.
They did. They did it on their own.
I would say so, because the big capital, well, the 5-year plans of the Soviet Union.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
I mean,
was there something to be said for the 5-year plans?
Well, absolutely.
Was there something to be said for communism?
Well, you want me to answer the question?
Yeah, no, I'm trying to get
the
at
first
it in a
question.
way. Yeah.
The first question
Maybe
you asked.
Communism was not such a bad idea.
2/3 of the people in the countryside in 1927 ended up in the cities working in factories in 1937. There was a tremendous population shift, in other words,
the war, yeah.
Well, before the war, to build up
war.
the infrastructure.
Yeah, okay, yeah, right.
And then the war broke out, and the Hitler's armies, which was a coalition, along a 1,400-mile front, which is the distance from Maine to Key West,
really?
attacked the Soviet Union. Yes,
yeah, that's
that was
huge.
the
Yeah.
4.5 million member army did this.
Yeah.
And they pressed eastward and confronted the Russians, who moved back to and then they had these very innovative battle formations, the Red Army, and Hitler decided to go after Stalingrad, which is on the Volga River near the Caspian Sea, where the oil is, because Hitler needed the oil. Well, the wars were all about oil.
He seemed like a deranged person.
Well, he acted in front of a mirror. They've discovered that he acted theatrically in front of a mirror, very much like a Trump.
He sure pulled it off.
Well, Trump,
like a Trump, yeah.
Well, Trump also has a certain approach, theatrical approach, which works very well on TV.
I think you ought to just take your hat off to what he pulled off.
Right.
He took 17 people coming with all the political establishment of the Republican Party, the grand old party, and just with tweets.
Because he embodies their frustration.
So everybody can bring input, and he worked that like a champ, did he not?
Yes, he did.
He just took over the media of the world.
So it's
important.
important.
Of the world, not just of the country.
Well, it's important to know your audience, and it's important to know how to appeal to your audience emotionally as well as intellectually.
He did it, didn't he?
Well, he did it, obviously. And then his audience was the Republican Party. The Republican establishment was too staid, too stuffed, and low energy, as he said of Jeb Bush. And
well, everybody's low energy except him. You know, he thinks that, But anyway, he reminds me of Mussolini.
Yeah, I mean, that you have to be theatrical, and people are desperate. They look for a figure who's out there and active, who they can identify with.
Yeah, he deserves kudos for having pulled it off.
Well, I mean, in the sense that Hitler and Mussolini deserve kudos for pulling it off.
Well, in that regard, I wonder. While we're saying Hitler, and that was fascism, and that's what the charge would be from the left. Let's just say of Trump is this quasi-fascism and so forth and everything. But from the right, how about the thing that maybe Stalin and communism and good old Karl Marx and communism might have been not such a bad idea after all, if we could just get rid of all these people who are running the system into the ground, these people that own all the assets and have no feeling for the masses. Maybe Karl Marx had a good idea, and we ought to reinvigorate communism as a real threat or as an opportunity for the people of the United States, but it doesn't seem to be picked up on or something.
Well, it was picked on. Let's put it this way. You say it doesn't seem to, but 11.5 million people voted for Bernie Sanders in the primaries, and Bernie Sanders identified as a democratic socialist.
Okay, that's getting over there, isn't it?
And 84% of the people who voted Democratic, who were under the age of 30, 84% voted for Sanders. So it is a generational thing. People are born, people die. They're conditioned a certain way.
Interesting.
They weren't conditioned. They weren't conditioned to anti-communism because that generation doesn't remember communism.
Right. Well, okay, but we're talking in metaphors in a certain sense.
Not metaphors. I'm talking practicality and reality.
Trump did it by working this thing called...
But he's in the Republican Party.
No, but I know. But it's the same side. It's on both sides and everything. It's a gross thing. And what he worked is this thing called tweet. Or Twitter. He was, and that's what the youth don't even have televisions or anything anymore. It's all access to the tweets where you got this democratic thing. It's going crazy, and the youth is all in there. And then on the other side, Bernie Sanders. What I'm trying to say is there's a tremendous ability for somebody to question the system as it is now and the people who are running the system in a traditional kind of way. And on the two sides, on the one side you've got socialism. Let's just call it what it is, socialism. Get rid of that private sector. They're stealing everything. They're terrible. They're ones who make the trouble and set everything up in a utopian way for the people because we're representing the people. But what I'm saying, it's on both sides.
But the point is, if
time is really
all
odd.
right, look, can we go back to what we were sort of with Sanders?
Yeah.
If he had a clear playing field, which he did not, because it's clear that Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who was running the DNC, she was rigging the selection in favor of Hillary Clinton and the superdelegates.
How did they avoid that?
Well,
if they've got a Democratic Party and you've got a favorite, you got dissension within it. How can they be?
The Democratic Party doesn't mean that it's necessarily democratic.
Now, the Republican
just like the
Party,
Chinese Communist Party doesn't mean it's necessarily communist. They can call themselves whatever, but we have to look at the practical effects of their policies and of their program.
Okay, well, that's a true thing. They called themselves communists too. And then they fought a long, dark war, a Cold War, communism against democracy? We called it.
But the people who are coming of age in their 20s now don't remember this, and so the socialism does not have a dirty word. It doesn't, and communism. I'm not. We're talking about socialism.
Well, socialism is different.
And Twitter and all the rest of those are
socialism is just weak communism.
But also social media, Twitter, Facebook. It's very social. It's very socialized. People communicate very effectively without the medium of television or radio. They don't have to get on that
or the
area.
New York
they
Times,
can get on it directly. Exactly. They can communicate.
The old guard is just getting in the way.
They can communicate directly.
And he did the same. The one did it to the Republican Party. They just cut all the Republican Party traditionals out. It's gone. There's no traditional
party.
Because
there's nothing there.
And
These are suits,
and the Democratic Party cut the socialist thing out by just putting the finger on the thing to bring somebody in who's traditionally bound.
But let's compare the conventions. There was much more unanimity behind Trump at the convention than there was unanimity.
But he had to build that up, and he insulted them all.
I understand, but I'm comparing.
And he did a masterful job.
Harold, I'm comparing the Democratic Party convention with the Republican Party convention. There was much more unanimity present at the Republican Party convention than there was at the Democratic Party convention, where 500 delegates walked out.
And also
you didn't see that in the Republican convention.
But the whole Republican the whole Republican establishment didn't come.
That's another matter.
There was a Republican Party, and it didn't bother to come to it.
But Harold, I'm comparing the conventions. I'm comparing the conventions. We're jumping when we're comparing apples and oranges, and I want to just talk about apples, and then I want to talk about oranges.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to jump from one to the other without responding to the particular point that you raised at a particular moment.
Well,
I can't answer questions simultaneously. Okay, so the conventions were very different in character.
Yes.
And that's important to recognize.
Well, the Democrats still going on.
Yes, it's still going on. And it's a retread. I mean, Bill Clinton and his wife and their daughter, it's dynastic. That attempt was made at the Republican.
We're back to the Barons
with Jeb Bush. That attempt was made, and it failed because people want.
Not only Jeb Bush, a whole bunch of the Republican.
I'm talking about the Jeb Bush dynasty. The Bush dynasty. It failed. No. They wanted to make it 3 times.
Well, Mitch McConnell and the whole Republican establishment.
I'm comparing dynasties. We have the Clinton dynasty and the Bush dynasty. The Bush dynasty was unable to exercise.
That's the point.
That's the point. I was talking about dynasty.
Yeah, all right.
Trying to do a comparison of dynasties.
Yeah, families back to the old days of feudalism.
Well, we have it in New York State with Cuomo.
Yeah.
Son of Cuomo.
So anyway, there's a lot of angst in the air, and there's a lot going on and everything like that. And I don't know what we're going to do. You're going to vote for Jill Stein. And
she's a pediatrician. She's well educated. She's well spoken.
Yes,
she is compassionate. She has a program which is solid, which benefits the people and the environment. And I've always been a supporter of the Greens ever since Ralph Nader ran the first time in 1996.
Right, he was
sort of a seminal figure in the Green Party.
Now, what's happened to the what has happened? He had a great deal of effect, and we can go back to Ross Perot or something. But Ralph Nader, say, he was a
consumer advocate.
Consumer advocate, automobiles and all that kind of stuff, and he had a huge effect.
He had a huge effect, exactly.
And he still
NYPIRG, all the public interest groups came about mainly because of his influence. And that's an important component and a positive component introduced into the body politic by a man who could not be corrupted. He is incorruptible. And that's the important point. And he served a very important purpose, bringing visibility to the Green Party. And now Jill is in charge. She ran in 2012. She's running in 2016. And she embraces the social insurgencies from an independent perspective, the Green Party perspective.
Would the Green Party people tend to like Bernie Sanders?
Well,
because he has many of the similar kinds of end results he would like to see that Jill does.
As soon as Sanders officially lost the nomination, Bernie Sanders, as soon as he lost the nomination, Jill Stein's contributions went up 1,000%. Because a lot of this affected Sanders people. Not a lot, but enough.
That's what we want to talk about that. You can talk about that.
They have embraced the Green Party. Okay.
So do you think it's a good idea to encourage people to vote Green?
Well, of course.
And that would take away from, that might, let's just say people would make the choice.
But it's not,
they're obviously good. And then there's
not
other guy,
two-dimensional. You can't remove one variable and expect that to be
I want to make
cut and dry.
the point. But the point could be made by people that if by voting for some third party that's not going to do anything is going to make it possible for Mr. Trump to win.
What do you mean not going to do anything? You got to start somewhere, Harold.
No, the Green Party is not going to win anything.
Let's look at this historically.
Okay.
Third parties act as catalytic agents for transformation of the two parties. They either introduce an issue, like, let us say, in the 19th century, anti-slavery, which the Liberty Party introduced in 1839. The Liberty Party in 1839 was the third party which introduced anti-slavery issue into the body politic, because the Congress, the two-party system, at the time, passed a gag rule in 1838, excuse me,
no, that's right.
to 1844, that said it's against congressional rules to raise the issue of slavery in the halls of Congress. It was such a divisive issue. So a third party did. And that third party then changed its name to the Free Soil Party in 1848 and ran as a third party. And then the Whig Party, which was divided on the slavery issue, Northern Whigs were against the expansion of slavery, Southern Whigs were for. It split the Whig Party irrevocably. The Democratic Party in the 19th century was the party of race supremacy, which what was left of it became the Dixiecrats of the South in the 20th century.
How did the Republican Party fit in?
The Republican Party took a big chunk of the Whigs, the Northern Whigs, combined it with the anti-immigrant Know-Nothing Party, which was anti-Catholic, and with the Free Soilers, no more expansion of slavery, to create the Republican Party. And Lincoln came in 1860 with a minority of the popular vote, 39%, because the Democrat 39%.
Only. Where'd the rest go?
The rest went to the Democrats. If the Democrats had been united, they would have won the election, but they split. They had two conventions in two different cities. The Southern Convention was held in Charleston because the Southern Democrats did not want to continue anymore in a party which did not offer firm guarantees to the expansion of slavery. The larger element of the Democratic Party said, let's leave it up to the new states coming into the Union whether they want slavery.
Missouri Compromise or something?
No, Missouri Compromise was 1820, Harold. We're now in 1860.
All right, you're right. Okay, good. Thank you.
So the point being that there was also a constitutional Union Party which said, well, regardless of your position on slavery, we need to support the Union. So those people were 61%, but split between three parties. We had four parties running, and Lincoln's Republicans won because the way the Electoral College is set up in this country, the party that wins the plurality of votes in the state gets the electoral delegates. So Lincoln comes in 1860 and the South withdraws. The point about all this extended discourse
it's wonderful. I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for that. That's very good.
Is because third parties can be very influential. Ross Perot was in 1992. He was in the race. He was so effective that in California he was ahead of both Bush and Clinton. Then he claimed that his family was threatened by the Bush people, which is likely given the character of the Bush family. All right, and he dropped out. He was presented in the mass media, which is working with the intelligence establishment in many cases, and he was presented as a flake, but he still got 19% of the vote and cost Bush the election, since many of those people would have voted Republican.
I want to share something quick, a little conversation we had before the camera started.
Yeah.
And we're friends, right?
Right.
We go way back. We're friends. You met the dog and everything. We're friends, right?
Right,
So
of course.
anyway, and you just shared with me that you've been heavy at work writing and so forth and doing it. So a lot of this that you're doing, you're involved in writing that. I want to thank you and your fellow scholars for the good work at running all these things down about history like you just did.
Well,
I want to thank you for your work.
Thank you very
and
much,
for your
Harold.
fellows who do
appreciate it.
academics who do serious work at running down and getting some of the facts so that we can have a basis of understanding things in a more comprehensive way.
Well, absolutely.
That's all I wanted to say.
Well, I appreciate it,
Oh, no, really, because that was very
much.
interesting, you running
Very
that
much.
down, and with some authority, see?
Right, well-
so we ought to have some authorities we can refer to in order to get at what is the truth, right?
If you don't know your history,
You
don't understand the present, and you're bound to repeat it.
Who is that?
Santayana was
That was
one.
Santayana, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That was a good
And
one.
those who are condemned, those who don't know history, are condemned to repeat it. That's to say it more succinctly.
Yeah.
That was the issue.
So, okay, so anyway, so we're back. That was really a good lesson in history, and it's good to have
The third
that.
parties are catalytic agents.
Yeah.
And to say
Yeah.
that because somebody votes for a third party, they were automatically going to vote Democratic and that would cost the Democrats the election is absurd.
Do you think
Nothing
it is?
works like that. Of course it is. Everything. You remove the
Didn't
variable.
you just talk in
well,
there
wait a
about
minute,
somebody
Harold. Let me
voting somewhere
explain.
that
If you remove
you said, if I
a
may.
variable from the
Yeah, wait a
mix,
minute, wait a
it
minute.
upsets the constellation, the relationship of all the elements in the mix.
They would have won. The Democrats would have won if they weren't split.
No, that's
the
what
North and South.
I am
they would have
giving.
won.
This is the argument given by people who don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
Because you remove a component from any social situation, it's going to affect the relationship of all the other people in that situation.
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
not one-dimensional or two-dimensional. It's multivariate analysis. You remove one variable, that upsets the relationship of all the other variables.
So you don't
And it
think
was-
voting
and then-
for
and
Jill
then-
Stein will lead to Mr. Trump?
Why are you assuming
That's what
that?
they will say. That's what the Democrats
They
will
can
say.
they can say the
You're
moon is
good-
made of green cheese. That doesn't make it right.
No, you know, but that's what they say.
They can say what they want. They brought us into the four wars of the 20th century: the First World War, the Second
they?
World War,
Who's
the
they?
Democrats.
The Democrats should
Korean War
Yeah.
and the Vietnam War.
Okay.
All Democratic presidents brought us into those wars.
They happen to be. Then,
No,
yeah.
they all happened to bring us into those wars. Kennedy would not have, but Kennedy was assassinated. Johnson did, because that was part of the game, to get him in from Texas. Dallas was the stage. The mayor of Dallas was the brother of one of the Air Force generals fired over the Bay of Pigs on the Joint Chiefs of Staff
That's
in
that Jack Ruby guy
1962.
was involved.
Well, I'm talking about
Oh,
Dallas. The mayor of Dallas was the brother of one of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Air Force General Cable, So they worked together to set Kennedy up. Ruby was working for the FBI. Ruby was part of the problem.
That's Jack Ruby.
Jack Ruby, yes.
I got a friend who knew Jack Ruby.
Okay, so if you look at the analyses of the assassination, there are two books, one on the actual technology, Crossfire by Jim Marrs, the other, JFK on the Unspeakable by James Douglas, where he does an analysis. Kennedy was for peace. Kennedy wanted a rapprochement with the Russians, whereas Hillary calls Putin like Hitler, which is obscene as well as absurd. She's an obscenity in her politics. She's worse than Trump on Russia. She is a warmonger. She's voted for every war that I can think of.
Seems that way.
Well, not seems. What did she do with Gaddafi?
Don't tell me about that because that's too close.
Well, I'm just telling you. I'm telling you what she did.
No,
she said, we came, we saw, we killed him. And she laughed.
Well,
and Madeleine Albright, who made the speech last night, was interviewed on Leslie Stahl in the 1990s on 60 Minutes. And you can look this up. 500,000 dead. And Leslie Stahl said to her, well, do you think it was worth it?
I think it was necessary.
These are the kind of monsters that are posing as statespersons, because both of them are women, Albright and Clinton. Just because it's a woman doesn't mean...
You don't have a brief against women.
No, of course, but they use them. It's identity politics. It's got to be class politics. You put in Obama, because Obama would not win, but they had the economic collapse 6 weeks before he entered office. Okay? And that meant that people who were racist in Pennsylvania, for instance, would vote for Obama because the economy collapsed under Bush. But before the collapse, McCain was going to win. So it was timed for September 2008 for the economic collapse. Whereas
when did he select that woman from Alaska?
I don't know, but to me that was like a setup. That he wasn't really aware.
That was like a comic thing or something.
Yes, it was. It was
like
absurd.
A comic book.
Right. But she was good for the oil companies in Alaska. That was the main bottom line. She was very good on oil pipelines in Alaska.
Yeah, right.
And not very keen, I should say, on the environment. Sarah Palin. So and
she could see Russia from her house.
Right, no, but that's the stuff we emphasize. The point is, we vote for the presidential candidate, not for the vice presidential candidate.
Yeah, okay,
So that's the choice. We have a choice between Jill Stein, Hillary Clinton, and Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump said that climate change is a hoax. Okay? Well, that's absurd. But I don't see that Hillary Clinton is doing anything meaningful in that area. When she had the opportunity in the 1990s when her husband was president, she served 5 years on the board of directors of Walmart. And Walmart, of course, as we know, the people that work there... They got
a huge organization going all over the world.
Right. And the point is they treat their workers very badly.
They're in Arkansas.
And they pay them so low that the public in many towns across the country has to kick in the difference between their salaries in order to support the people who work there on welfare.
How are they able to get away with that?
This is how you get away with it here.
So
the almighty dollar. It's all about the money.
Would you call that corruption of the system?
I would call that corruption. Of course the system is corrupt.
It is corrupt, right?
Of course it's been that way since the beginning, but the system was on the up and up.
Wait, beginning of what?
The beginning of the Republic.
The Republic.
Right. It was founded on...
since the beginning of... I don't like to do this because I know you don't like it and everything, but how about it's been like that ever since the beginning of the Homo sapiens species?
It was not. It was hunting. There was no corruption because there was no money at the beginning of the species.
Oh, you think it's only money that is corrupt?
Of course. Hunting and gathering, there was no money.
Well, yeah, but you don't think it was based upon one... No, basic assumption...
You said the beginning of Homo sapiens.
Zero-sum thinking is is something that seems to be accepted by everybody. And in a zero-sum situation, for one to win, the other has to lose. There's a winner and a loser.
There can be
and that's what there's winner or loser.
Harold, there can be cooperation between people. There can be cooperation.
But that's not zero sum. Zero sum is the assumption.
I'm not talking about zero sum. I'm not interested in zero sum.
Can we cast back and try and think about the mother who's trying to have her baby in a Cro-Magnon cave survive, and there's only 3 eggs in that nest, and her baby is starving, and so is the baby next door, and that they're going to fight like tigers in order to save their baby because there wasn't nearly enough, and there never has been nearly enough for everybody. So you had to have, for one to win, another had to lose.
Well, that's a hypothetical, which does not.
Yeah, well, it does.
Which is an extreme example.
Well, it's an extreme example.
I'm not interested in. I'm not interested in outliers, and I'm not interested in extremes.
Well,
I'm interested in how everybody relates and how we can learn to cooperate.
Well, I know, but
that's why Jill Stein is the best candidate.
That's good.
Running.
That's really good then. Okay, that's good. That's the direction and that way we're going. I guess it's getting better.
Mm-hmm.
You think things are getting better all the time? You don't think over the long haul?
No.
Or how do you
measure?
Not
anymore. Well, certainly in the area of medical care, they're getting better.
Well,
my daddy died.
My daddy was buried on his 48th birthday. That was the average age for a male in the United States, even an advanced country. At the end of having won a major war, that was the average age that they lived to. Now it's 78. That's some progress. That's 30 years we've
That's correct.
And it's evolving. You don't think there's been some improvements? They have these things called highways rather than rutted roads that you had to go with a wheeled cart with horse pulling it, and you can go. There's been some progress materially.
I would say that there was more progress when we had rail lines.
You
rather
think
than
so?
Autos, because rail lines create less pollution.
Well, okay, that's beginning
After the United States helped topple the regime, the democratic government in Iran in 1954. 2 years later, we got the Interstate Highway Act, which spent more money on the highways that you were just talking about. Let me finish.
Go ahead.
Okay, because you mentioned the issue of highways. I'm not jumping from one to the other.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah.
We spent more money on the interstate highway system than was spent on the entire Marshall Plan. All right?
Wow, that is something.
Okay, so that's the point, because it was the oligarchy, because they figured we could use oil ad nauseum. And of course,
we could make
polluted
a lot of those super highways. He built it off the Autobahns in Germany.
Exactly.
They had Autobahns, they were advanced. So we advance.
Right.
And we advance.
I don't know if that's an advance.
Well,
more
that's
automobiles,
a question to be brought
carbon dioxide, global warming. I don't think that's an advance.
That's an issue to be brought up.
In retrospect, that's not an advance.
Well, that's something to be brought up.
The dismantlement of the rail system, where General Motors and the Firestone, or was it Goodyear? The tire company and someone else got together and essentially dismantled the trolley system and the public transportation system.
The Red Line, they used to have the Red Line in Los Angeles.
Well,
that was a trolley thing. Yeah, right. I had
trolleys everywhere.
We used to have a trolley when I was a kid.
There were
in Detroit.
a lot of trolleys in New York City as well. And
they used to have trolleys with horses pulling them.
And we used to have the elevated trains on 1st Avenue, 2nd Avenue, and 3rd Avenue.
Are the good old days that good? I don't know.
In terms of public transportation and rail lines, I already said in medical care, we've really advanced.
He wants you to come in a little bit more for the
Okay, so I'm saying
not that we could get more cold.
Right. Okay, but the point is.
But for the interest of the camera.
I understand that. The point is,
we can still fight like tigers.
Well, we're going to continue to fight like tigers, but we need to. If we're going to pick a subject, let's stick with that subject.
Well, I'm trying to expand it out, and there's another quote out of history, and that is that history is a nightmare, one could add, of injustice from which we're attempting to awaken. The trend is toward greater degree of arriving at a truly just order, including the ecology, through time, that's another premise that there's no examples out of history.
That's a hypothetical.
That is hypothetical to be presented.
But right now we're going in the other direction.
You think?
Well, we know this. We're going in the other direction. Endless war, right? Endless war. Pollution continues, and education is on decline because the public sector is being starved and everything's going to the private sector.
I think education's on decline because there's absolutely practically no systems thinking going on in the intellectual community at all. It's all divide and conquer into a bunch of specializations, and they become inept. at being able to have any kind of effective discussion of what's actually going on, because it's all caught up within divided and conquered political breaking it up.
If you deal with the five needs that people have.
Yeah, say them again.
Jobs, education.
Jobs, wait a minute. Education.
Healthcare.
Health.
Housing. And the environment. If you address all those issues, we will have more peace, more kindness, more compassion, and that's what Jill Stein embodies.
Okay, well that would be anybody else? Has anybody else ever had it so together, if that's the right? There used to be somebody else that was Green Party in the beginning, wasn't there? Jill's brother. Who was there?
Ralph Nader.
Was it Ralph Nader? Was there somebody between Ralph Nader and Jill?
Yes, there was Cynthia McKinney. And there was David Cobb.
Yeah.
But Nader was the seminal figure in 1996 and 2000.
Yeah, and he's a consumer advocate.
But Jill has been the most effective candidate we've had.
She is good. What's her background?
Well, her background is Massachusetts, Harvard Medical School. Yeah. She's a pediatrician, so she cares about children and babies and youth and their needs. And is a very kind, wonderful person.
Yeah.
I mean,
intelligent.
Genuinely, of course.
And very committed.
Very, very genuine.
Yeah.
And she's not insincere. She doesn't say one thing and do another, like the other two. Okay, who are now claiming they're going to Hillary's claiming she's going to do something about higher education, but she didn't advocate anything beforehand on this score. She's more interested in confrontation, because war is very profitable to the power structure. Because you can charge whatever you want for weapons, but you can only charge so much if you produce a consumer item like a car.
I've got an appointment. Yes. I got an appointment with that wonderful, wonderful guy, David McReynolds. You know David McReynolds?
Yes, I know David McReynolds.
He's a great gentleman.
Well,
a
David
wonderful
McReynolds,
scholar. And, go ahead.
I met him when I was at Columbia.
We got an appointment next week with him.
He spoke before the Student Peace Union at Columbia College when I went to Columbia in the 60s. He was the first speaker there, and he was talking about peace. He was talking about pacifism. Yeah. And he's a socialist, and he was very inspirational at the period.
He still is in my book.
He still is, and
he's still sending me stuff. He sent me a thing. He's got this thing. I forget what he's doing now, but he's so. I love the man dearly. He's so great, and he sent me a chart, and I had to have this in order for it to get into my pea brain and everything like that. The enormity of it, particularly. And he sent a chart, and it was from one of those agencies, and it's a big circle, okay? Circle like this, everybody? Big circle. And here it is, little pie-like things like this, little pie-like things like this, and so this is education, this is children's, this is food, this is this, and then almost 60% of the cost of the federal government is military.
Well, of course. If you have,
I had never seen it so stark. Military. And what the hell are they doing? And somebody else, one other thing, okay? Somebody sent it to me. You get stuff, I got to make sure, right? But that there's some sort of a thing, $1 trillion proposal to deal with the atomic weapons in our arsenal?
Well, of course.
Have you read that, or you have any? Is that
obviously?
That seems obscene.
The point is, that's the trajectory of U.S. foreign policy. That's all. 96% of all bases that are on foreign soil are U.S. bases. 96%. And that's $1 trillion a year just to maintain those bases.
To maintain the bases that are all around.
Yeah, some 800 bases all over the world.
There was $1 trillion. It was it's good to get details, isn't it? That's why I respect your scholarship. And you get the things about Missouri Compromise for 20, not 60. You get things right. Somebody has to get things right and factual and everything.
Right, exactly.
But that $1 trillion for having to do with the atomic arsenal.
Well, obviously.
The atomic arsenal is the big club that we have. It's always been whoever's got the biggest club can beat the other one on the head. Back in that Cro-Magnon cave or in modern realpolitik. It hasn't always been the
case, Harold. You're just taking extreme examples.
Maybe.
Most people are not like that. Most people are good and believe in their leaders and then are betrayed by their leaders. But people have been betrayed too many times in this society,
Jesus was good.
so they are skeptical of the political process.
Jesus was good, and so was Spartacus, and they were both put up on the cross.
Yes, but I understand that. But the point is that people are very skeptical of the political system now because the political system seems incapable of delivering the goods to the people.
Where is the goods going to come from? Maybe from the green. You say from the green. That's a thing from which.
Look, the people, the 1% in the power have to share their tax burden with the rest of us. I, as a wage earner, my taxes are taken out beforehand. I, as a rich person, I can have the banks put it in offshore accounts and not pay it taxes.
You put your money in offshore accounts all the time?
I, as a rich person, should I speak more loudly? Perhaps I should.
I'm playing with you.
Yeah, you're playing with me, okay. But the point is, this is a serious matter.
Yeah, I know it is.
You're salting the money away. We should go back to the tax system we had in the 1970s and share the tax burden equitably, not penalize people.
But you don't think the overall trend is for things to get better in terms of...
Not in this country.
I asked you off camera, what does it mean? How do you define being a have? And could we get at a thing where you get the have of the world? And how would you get a definition? What does it mean to be a have, you know? And
to be secure in your life.
No, that's the thing. But you could measure it. And then you could measure it on percentage terms. And then you could measure it historically on percentage terms. What is the trend? Are there more haves and have-nots? Has there always been have-nots?
No, there are more have-nots now than ever before. More people are poorer.
You think that?
If you look at the entire planet of 7.3 billion people, yes. We can say that because the population has increased.
We're heading for 9, I think. Yeah, well, they think it's going to have a low.
I'm just dealing with what it is right now. Okay?
2020.
I can't mix projections with facts. I can extrapolate from facts on the ground, but I can't. I would prefer to deal with the situation right now, which is that there are more people in poverty than ever before.
Well, there's more people.
Yes, there are more people, of course, but also proportionally speaking, people are suffering, especially the so-called middle class in this country, which provides a lot of the shall we say, a lot of the energy that is going into the Trump movement, especially the play that's been given to Black Lives Matter. A lot of the whites are resentful, and they're voting for Trump. This is a racist society. It always has been a racist society from the beginning. For slavery and segregation and differentials between firings.
Cast back, it's 200,000 years, right? We're agreed. 200,000 years we've been here on this planet. Yeah. When was the best time for the Homo sapiens species in terms of...
in terms of what? Impact on the planet?
I don't know, just a general thing. When was it better? My pretension is it's getting better all the time.
Well, that's good.
It's back and forth.
That was a Beatles song, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Well, they were pretty good. They had some pretty good ideas and everything. But I think it's getting better. I think it's a higher percentage of the population. In terms of capability, we have a capability of taking care of people, but we don't have a system that allows us to do what we're wanting to do. We have the capability of doing.
Of course.
And Thomas Piketty, you've gotten to.
I have. I'm
Do you make sense of it or not?
I didn't read it. I'm sorry.
Oh, nobody can read it. It's also, nobody can understand it except some mathematician, PhD, 6 of them in a row. It's all complicated. But what he's saying, they got to get some demand into the hands of the people. People need to have the ability. The main thing people have to do is consume. Don't put all this. Don't put all this.
You underconsume. You're better off than if you overconsume.
No. Well, all right, that's one thing. But
what do you mean one thing? Physiologically speaking, that's true.
Well, maybe I don't know. That's a thing you could do. But the major thing is we got a capability, but the people don't have the ability to consume the good life that we have the capability of providing. They've got to get some buying power into the hands of the masses of the people.
Well,
it's all going toward with cybernetics. It's all going into fewer and fewer hands, and the people are being put on the sidelines in terms of their labor input. The labor theory of value, Mr. Marx, or from whoever, is all sung and everything like that. But we got to have some other way of getting money to people other than through labor. It would seem. I don't know. That's Mr. Keynes.
Mr. Keynes believed in the government acting as the pump to get the economy moving.
Yeah, but he argued in 1930 to his grandchildren that you have a problem. technologically induced massive worldwide unemployment as the means of production passed from labor input, people on an assembly line, to, and that's exactly what's going on.
Well, that's what's happening.
That's what's going on now. We don't have an alternate way.
We don't have an alternate way.
We don't have an alternate way of distributing demand or buying power to the people because we want them all to be wage slaves to have a job and get a certificate from the university so they can maybe get a job to get some money.
In Austria, which is a small country, to be true,
that's true.
You give people a basic income so that they can participate in the society.
I think it'd be great to give everybody money.
But this is where we're at right now.
Yeah, but we're all caught up with how you have to do something to get money. That's called having a job or having a function, and you have to go to university.
But you have to pay the job adequately. So you have to pay for the person
but that's
to
the traditional
task.
argument that's going to be going on in this election year and everything like that. Get jobs for everybody, jobs, but they're not getting at
not having Trans-Pacific Partnership and not having NAFTA, because NAFTA did not create full-time jobs with full benefits, as Bill Clinton promised. And as all the presidents, both Democrat and Republican, argued when they came to that news conference back on September 14th, 1993, in which Clinton said, I wouldn't sign that bill if I didn't mean full-time job with full benefits. And I wouldn't sign it, and I think it would be very good for Mexico to sign it because it'll advance its economy. Well, that's not what happened. The reverse happened. And this Trans-Pacific Partnership is the same.
I think everybody's down on that now, aren't they? Except a few bankers.
Well, the point is it's going to pass.
You think it is?
Of course it's going to pass.
You think it's going to pass?
The opposition doesn't count. What counts is the money. What counts is the vested corporate interests. Because who benefited from NAFTA between the United States and Mexico? But Monsanto. The seeds that they introduced into the Mexican production of flour and the tacos drove out the farmers, and they came to New York. Mexican population increased dramatically because of the negative impact that NAFTA had upon Mexico. How many people understand this?
So we're coming to the end of the time. We're down to the end of the time as usual with our program.
Right.
Are you optimistic, pessimistic for the human prospect?
I'm pessimistic.
You are.
Optimism.
Maximally pessimistic. You think it's going to blow up the world?
It's very possible that an accident could happen and blow up the world. Yes.
Not the world, but the human society could be blown up.
Course,
we could eliminate the human society.
Right.
That's the kind of breaking point.
The point is, if people follow these characters in the two parties who are running for office this time around, especially Hillary Clinton. Trump is a complete racist. On the other hand, he's got a more sensible policy toward Russia than Clinton. Clinton is confrontational. She believes in war, and she's a warmonger. And she had this Madeleine Albright. We began the conversation here by talking about
realpolitik is all realpolitik. If you go and study realpolitik, it's all based on whoever's got the biggest club can hit the other on the head. It's been like that ever since forever, and it still is. So you got to have that kind of
but the world,
a way of thought
ecologically, environmentally can't take it anymore.
Right.
To protect advanced species. The cockroaches will do fine.
Well, don't say that.
Don't say that.
Fine. It's too close to pot. We're running out of time. We've got to run the graphics. I do believe in everything. Yeah. We could go on talking and everything like that. But don't say that, because it isn't like the Civil War. Gettysburg was terrible, but it goes on. We're now at a point where if it's terrible and really goes like that and just into chaos, it's the whole species. That's a whole new ballgame. There's got to be something on the living side comparable
first of all, we have to depart from war.
Jill Stein, maybe.
Well, you listen to Dave McReynolds, so you'll be talking to next week. Dave McReynolds,
beautiful. He's going to be on next week.
Well, that'll be great, because he'll talk to this particular point about being anti-war.
And you are, and I thank you so much for your scholarship and for your colleagues.
I appreciate being on the program, the opportunity to at least present my point of view.
Yeah, and yes. Thank you for viewing. We're coming right back tomorrow. We're tuning in. This is him, the Tony Gronowicz, scholar extraordinaire. Thank you. We're coming back tomorrow. Thanks again, Tony. Good to see you all.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Okay. Let's see if he's here. Okay. Oh.
So don't forget, Harold, I'm going to call you to find out who that person was. What time do you get home?
Tonight? I'm not sure. Things are, look, we're dodging.
He has to go to all the pubs.
No, we're dodging process servers and stuff like that, so I can't be real dependable. Okay, when? I can't have a steady schedule. I know we're dodging people.
You mean your lawyer isn't doing a good job? The lawyer isn't doing a good job? What?
Maybe you want to be on my show?
Oh yeah, you mentioned that. I'd love to.
I love
I wanna.
We'll be in touch. We'll be in touch.
Okay.
But no, it's